This is episode 14. In the previous episode, we had finished till verse 2.30. In verses 11 to 30, God talks about the eternal soul. And God uses the same words to describe the eternal soul, which are generally used to describe Him. Today, I just want to start off by giving you a glimpse of that. Let's listen to verse 7.25. This verse is, न अहम प्रकाशः सर्वस्य योग माया समावृतः मूढ़ो अयम न अभिजानाति लोको माम ajam avyayam. God is saying that I am not manifest to everyone, being veiled by the delusion of my yog maya or my cosmic delusion. Those without knowledge do not know that I am without birth, unreducible and changeless. Did you notice that God uses these words in chapter 2 for the soul, the same words? And in chapter 7, He is using the same adjectives for Himself. So this is to reference what I said about the usage of the same words for the soul and God. Let's move to part 3 of chapter 2, since we have already covered part 2 of chapter 2. The first part of chapter 2 was Arjun's plea to God, and the second part was the eternal soul. The third part starts now, and verses 31 to 53 constitute the third part of chapter 2. God has already talked about the soul being eternal. But what is the righteous battle for us, and how should we fight this battle, is covered in verses 31 to 53 of chapter 2 by God. Today, we will cover a total of 8 verses, that is verses 31 to 38. Let's start off with verse 31, which is, Swadharmam api च अवेक्ष्य न विकम्पितुम अर्हसि धर्म्यात् हि युद्धात् श्रेयः अन्यत् क्षत्रियस्य न विद्यते. God says, on seeing your dharma or righteous battle, you should not waver. Indeed, for a warrior, there is no better engagement than fighting to uphold the righteous battle. There is nothing better or more propitious for a warrior than fighting the righteous battle. This is an important verse, and its interpretation means for a soldier, there is no bigger war than the righteous battle or dharma yudh, and the soldier should not waver upon seeing that. This is applicable to others as well. For example, for a student, gaining knowledge is their righteous battle. For a businessman, expanding the business and increasing the profit margin is their righteous battle. For a parent, showing the correct path to the children and raising them in the right way is their righteous battle. Also, the internal war between the blind senses and wisdom, intellect and yoga inside you is your righteous battle, and you have to learn and fight out this internal battle. God is saying that this righteous battle is staring you right in the face, no matter whether you are a student, a soldier, a businessman or a parent. If you are still unable to comprehend this, then you may consult a wise person or a teacher or try listening to your inner voice. But it is literally staring you in the face. It is right there in front of you. And there is nothing better than this war for you. This was verse 31. And verse 32 is, Yadricha cha uppannam suvargudwaram apavritam sukhinah kshatriyah parth labhante yudham idrisham. God is saying, O Parth, happy are the warriors to whom such opportunities to defend righteousness come unsought. This is like someone opening for them the stairway to heaven. Again, this interpretation works in different contexts. This is fine for a soldier, but even if you are a businessman or a student or a parent, getting a chance to fight this righteous battle is as if you've been provided with an opening to the stairway to heaven. Then verse 33 is, At Chet tvam imam dharmyam sangramam na karishyasi tata swadharmam kirtim cha hitva papam avapsasi. God says, if however you refuse to fight this righteous battle and abandon your duty, your dharma, then your reputation will suffer and you will incur sin. This is verse 33. Then verse 34 is, Akirtim chapi bhutani kathashyanti te avyayam Sambhavitasya cha akirti maranat atirichyate. God is saying, people will speak of you as a coward and a deserter. For a respectable or honorable person, infamy is worse than death. Dishonor exceeds death. God says Men will speak of thy ignominy forever, and to a man of repute, dishonor is worse than death. Again, if you are a student and you avoid studying, then people will speak of you as a quitter, and that is worse than death. If you are a businessman and if you avoid fighting with your unscrupulous competitors, then again people will speak of you as a quitter, which is worse than death. Similarly, if you are a parent and you abandon your child in their teenage years, then the infamy spoken against you by people would be worse than death. And if you choose to quit the internal righteous battle, then also that leads to infamy. In this case, others won't speak ill of you, but your own self-esteem will always remind you that you chose to run away from the internal righteous battle. And if that happens, you will never be able to achieve eternal peace because your self-esteem will be hurt. Your internal impartial introspection, Sanjay, will always remind you that you ran away from the righteous battle and hurt your self-esteem, which is worse than death. Now verse 35 is Bhayat Ranat Uparatam Mansyante Tvam Maharatha Yesham Cha Tvam Bahumato Bhutva Yasasi Laghavam. God says, the great generals who hold you in high esteem will think that you fled from the battlefield out of fear, and thus you, who is highly regarded, will lose all the respect in people's eyes. This is important, and we will talk about it because Sanjay inside you will always remind you that you fled, and the size of your self-esteem will continue to shrink with time. Now, verse 36 is Avachya cha bahun vadishyanti tav ahitah nindantah tav samarthyam tato dukhtaram nukim. This translates into your enemies will defame and humiliate you with unkind words, disparaging your might. Alas, what could be more painful than that? This was verse 36. And verse 37 is one of the most celebrated verses of the Gita. It is quoted quite often. Let's listen to this verse. Hato va prapsasi swargam jitva va bhokshase mahim tasmat uttishta kaunteya yuddhaya kritnishchaya. The literal translation of this verse is, if you fight, you will either be slain on the battlefield and go to heaven, or you will gain victory and enjoy the kingdom on earth. Therefore, arise with determination, O Arjun, and fight. This verse is self-explanatory for a soldier, that if he dies, he will become famous as a martyr and will merge into God. If he wins, then he will rule the earth, and hence he should fight. But this also works in the context of others, be it a student, businessman, or a parent. If you win the battle as a businessman, it will expand your business. If you do so, but even if you lose, it indirectly benefits you as it teaches you the skill of struggling and persevering. You will emerge as a much better warrior for the next battle, to be fought by learning from the mistakes you committed the first time round. This is an everyday battle and is not confined to only one instance. Similarly, even if you lose the internal battle, you've learned from your mistakes. If you couldn't control the blind senses, you learned by resisting them the first time and learning to fight better for the second occasion. When I was a kid, my father used to narrate the story of King Robert the Bruce of Scotland and Spider. In the story, King Robert the Bruce becomes dejected and sad after losing a war. As he is contemplating in a cave, he happens to see a spider trying to weave a web on the ceiling. In doing so, the spider falls on the floor 25 times, but doesn't give up. It keeps trying again and again and again after every fall, and finally succeeds in building the web. So losing is not the end. As people say, you learn a lot from your mistakes. You learn to struggle and fight and persevere, which is one of the most important learnings in life. So this verse in summary says, if you win, you will rule the earth, and if you die, you will land in heaven. This doesn't hold true only for a soldier, but it holds true for all of us. Finally, verse 38 is, Sukh dukhe same kritva labh alabho jay ajayo tato yuddhai yujjasva na evam papam avapsasi. God is saying, O Arjun, fight for the sake of duty or dharma. treating alike happiness and distress, loss and gain, victory and defeat. Fulfilling your duty in this way, you will never incur sin. Now, if you look at these verses, God is saying that there is no need for extensive search, as your righteous battle is in front of you. It is staring you. Whoever you may be, wherever you may be, the battlefield is in front of you, and you have to fight this battle without fleeing. And if there is a need to search for it, then ask a wise man or a teacher, or ask your inner voice. This is what God is basically saying. Your righteous duty is the duty that you have to follow, and that is the essence of all of these verses. I will go back to one verse, which is 2.33, which is At chet tvam imam dharmyam sangramam na karishyasi tatah swadharmam kirtim cha hitva papam avapsasi. God says, Arjun, if you refuse to fight this righteous war, abandoning your duty or dharma, then your reputation will suffer and you will incur sin. A question is often asked, is Gita promoting violence? Well, that is not true. Non-violence is also a resistance or a war that is fought with spiritual force, not with weapons. This is also a war. Gita is not preaching violence or non-violence. Instead, it is preaching the importance of fighting the righteous battle, both external and internal righteous battle. Non-violence doesn't mean, for example, if someone attacked your house and you, being a follower of non-violence, don't fight back, forgive the attacker, and hand over your house and your belongings to him. No, you have to resist. You have to fight, but with spiritual force and not with weapons if you choose the path of non-violence. Let's say you suddenly came across a man-eating tiger. Would you resist it with non-violence? No, that is stupidity, because a man-eating tiger is governed by its instinct and will act accordingly. Hence, it is important to determine the ways and methods of fighting a certain battle based on the context, as well as the use of violence and non-violence. As I said in the beginning, always do karma with perseverance, with right principles, and with rational discrimination. That is very important. If you use non-violence as resistance in front of a man-eating tiger, then that is not the right weapon, and you did not exercise rational discrimination. Thank you.